Hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to Harness the Shift podcast. This is a space where we explore personal transformation, conscious leadership, and the journeys of people who are doing the inner work and bringing that awareness into how they live, lead, and serve. I am your host, Jay. All right, let's see who's joining us today.
People decide, right, when you're truly going to surrender, when you're going to let this go. Most people don't decide to do that until things hit rock bottom. And it's sad that, we have to have things like cancer or diseases or trauma or loss happen in our life to make these decisions. But most of the time that's the acting piece, because our subconscious, by the time we're 35 years old, is 95% of our mind. And so 5% is only the conscious part that can actually make the decision to change. When we think about losing weight and we're like, oh, we'll try something for a couple of weeks, but ultimately the subconscious program takes over and wants you to remain the same. And so it's literally like taking a teaspoon and trying to move a mountain.
Hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to Harness the Shift podcast. I'm your host, Jay. And on today's episode, I'm talking with Sari Cowsert, a certified hypnotherapist, master imagery facilitator, and Reiki practitioner who helps people release limiting beliefs, gain clarity, and step into aligned action. You can learn more about Sari and her work at thegrowthgoddess.net. All right, let's get into it. This is a really great podcast. Hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to Harness the Shift. Today, I am joined by Sari Cowsert, founder of Growth Goddess from Austin, Texas. Hello, Sari. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing amazing. I'm really happy to be in this space with you today. And I'm just excited to have a great conversation for people out there that need to hear this.
Yes. And you know what? This was our take two, because it's her like Mary, but it's Sari. And I think that it's the I that kind of tricks me, but I think I did okay that time.
You did great.
I was a little
You did
nervous.
great.
I was gonna, I don't like to mispronounce people's names, but Siri, thank you so much for being so patient and kind with that, because I'm like, my God, I don't want to mess it up. Thank you so much for being here. I know when we sat down and had our one-on-one to just kind of what I do with guests is I have them come on and we just kind of touch base and give a little bit. It's like a half an hour call before we have them come on and be guests. Just because I want to make sure I know, the vibe, and if we're in alignment, and I think that's an important time to really just touch base. So I really connected with you and your story, and I'm so excited that you're here today. So with that, tell us about your story. Tell us about your journey in this lifetime, and how you became the woman that you are today and doing the work that you do.
Thank you for that. That's a loaded question. But, I think even just starting with even just the name piece, right? Like being born with a name that is hard to pronounce for most people, I think was the first initiation of my life, to be honest. And so many times, it's normal for my name to get butchered by most people. And it took a really long time.
Why do you think that is? Not to interrupt you, but why do you think that is? Because it just happened. Isn't that weird?
That most people mess it up.
Yeah.
I think I think it's this call for me to be able to correct someone, to actually not feel small, and that you just messed up my name and I'm going to correct you. Where you have to be outspoken, you have to be bold, you have to be willing to do that. And for a lot of my life, I wasn't, like people would say sorry or Sari or Sarah, and I would just let it go. And I think that was someone actually pointed that out to me, that my name was a huge initiation just for my throat chakra in general. And it really is.
Yes. I never even thought of that connection until you just, oh my goodness. I just had a light bulb moment. Wow. So true. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to get on that because I'm like, it just happened. Like, and it's like, now I'm like, Sari, Mary, Sari, Mary. I mean, now it's like gone away. It's,
Mm,
wow. Interesting, right?
yeah. I love that. Love that.
I love that too. I love that too. I think this maybe this God is with us today
Always.
because I think that's, and then also I think I've always had an issue like if I do mess up and I do say something wrong, like I'm like, it's that I've always dealt with the shame of that if I've hurt someone because of something that I've done. But no, it is. I think it's, these are conversations that are so important for us to have because this happens every day.
Yeah.
It happens
Totally.
every day. And I think it happens every day because we're just so, like we were talking about first started. I'm like, it's like we're so caught up in the world and what it is that we do for a living or the demands that we have at home and all of that. So, not to get off on a tangent, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes. Well,
So,
I love a good tangent too.
I know,
And
me
I'm
too.
queen of those also on my
And
own
I like to
podcast.
bring it back, right?
Yeah.
You like, you go over here and it's like, just hold on. I'm going over here, but I promise I'm going to bring it back around. But it's so true that we can, if we just dial it down a little bit and listen more, like then we can really make the changes and not just, you know, keep doing things that we're doing. I think that this is not just about names, it's about everything, right? It's about
Yeah.
being present. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back
And
to
it,
you.
and really, yeah, I mean, I think even just the name in general,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would, so, I've shared with you most of my story really revolves around anxiety. It revolves around fear. And even, we can go back to the beginning of just the name of the, obviously I didn't know it at the time, but probably the anxiety that I was feeling by having to correct someone, by having to voice that you
Yeah.
didn't say that right. And I always say, Sari, what I used to think of as a kid, Sari is kind of like one of those names that like it could just be a standalone name by itself. Like when you think of Cher or
Yeah.
Madonna,
Yeah.
just Sari. That's it.
Right.
I think that there's also like a bigness to that too, that I think I always felt as a kid, but I was so scared to step into. And I think there's always been this really big energy around me, but the world that I experienced as a child was very chaotic. And I didn't know how to be big and live in the chaos at the same time. And so instead, I really shut down and pushed down all of that big energy. And I think anxiety for so much of my life was actually that energy trying to be let free. And I thought I needed to dim my light. And so I did. And the anxiety just kept coming. It kept persisting. And so I think that's the start of it, to be honest.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And we do that. I mean, we have done that in our lives where everyone has, where we shrink, where we don't say something because maybe we're fear of being judged, fear of what's going to happen if I do say something, fear of hurting people's feelings. I think, we all mess up. We're human, right? If we could just hold each other in regard for that and hold space for that, you know what, we're all human and we all mess up. I think we've just gotten so to the point where if we are corrected, it's like a personal attack, and it's not. It really isn't. You should have your name, honestly, come on, you should have your name pronounced right. It's not that it's not hard, right? So I think I have such compassion for this. And I think I have such compassion for this because when I was growing up, my name is Jamie. So I go by Jay because that's just kind of my nickname and has been my nickname since the military, times in the military. And so it's spelled Jamie, so which is the male, because I was supposed to be a James. And well, when I came into the world, I was a girl and they couldn't give me James. Although they could have given me James, I would have been cool with James too. But um, a lot of times people would mistaken me as as a male, and I'm like, no, I'm a girl. Hello, and even with the nickname of Jay, people think that I'm a guy.
Yeah.
They'll
And
mistake
what
it.
did that do for that version of you back then too? Right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think I grew up in a household with a Marine father and two brothers, so it was just my mom and I. And I lost my mom when I was 28, but I think that I've always kind of been like this tomboy and always having to flex into my masculine energy because that's just the experience I guess I signed up for. So yeah, when it is, I can see where obvious, like it's not the same, but it's similar where you can feel like, well, wait a minute, like I'm not a boy, I'm a girl. Like, come on, it's not that hard. Like you can tell, so it's funny, it's not funny. It affected me. I think when I was younger, it affected me. And also, that having to correct people, that gets old, when you're having to correct people. So it's like that itself can maybe shut this area down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I have all, and this is so interesting that this is happening. I'm like literally right now having a revelation, and it's amazing the revelations that I've been having in the last couple weeks, just processing a lot of things. And this is like, here's another nugget that could be the reason why for a long time that I kind of did shut that down. When I was younger, before my mother died, I was one of those kids that was a rebel. And I was like, yeah, middle finger to the world, misunderstood. I just I love human beings. I do. I love human beings. Like I think I get really wound up, or and used to. I think I can control it more so now, but I get wound up at injustices, when it comes to um human beings. And I don't know, I just like have this superpower where I can just see somebody's potential. And that's a really hard thing because it's like, not that you want to change anybody, but you want to be able to say, like, I see this in you, like I see your light. And like, this would be amazing if and being in human design, being a generator and having all of these ideas, right? And all the ideas are they're not just for me, they're for people that are in my orbit. So, but if the people in my orbit aren't open to those ideas, they may think, okay, she's cuckoo, but I'm really not. It's just that that's my superpower. I just have the ability to see that. So I do get super frustrated when I see that people are just not operating at their fullest potential. And so it's like, I hope before I leave this earth that people are operating on their fullest potential. Like if we can change we can change a dynamic, a mindset with this podcast right now. Oh, I'm getting the chills. If we could help just one person step in, like that to me is like so effing powerful. And we have that power. You have that power. I have that power. And it's like when people start to get on their journey, it's an amazing thing. And it's like, wow, like I'm like literally processing this today. And I'm like grateful, like super
Mm,
grateful, you know?
yeah.
Um,
Everything is supposed to happen as it is.
Right? And that's why I said, let's have this be just a conversation. Like, it doesn't have to be, we can learn in this, right? In like real time, like, wow, this is why we have to slow things down and really engage with people. Stop thinking about time. Time is an illusion, right? Like, we have time to sit down and start talking to one another because there's so much wisdom that you can bring to the table because of your experience. And look, it tapped into something that may have been totally different, but yet at the same time, like, it's kind of the same. So it's like, and it's all involving that energetic thing here. I think a lot of us have had our throats shut off where we're not speaking our truth.
Right.
So if
Majority of us.
yeah, the majority, yes. So I think if we can learn how to speak our truth, I think that's an important thing. It's kind of how we learn to speak the truth, right? And that comes from, I think that comes from healing. And I wasn't always, I was kind of a hothead. I look back like 7 years ago and I'm like, I don't even know who that. And so I think in a sense, maybe what I've been grieving over this is going to be deep, y'all. Sit in your chairs because it's coming. I think that I think Jamie, I want to step into this J because Jamie is no longer here with us. Isn't that crazy?
It's an evolution, right?
Yeah, it is. And like the harness the shift, man, that is that came very intentional because sometimes it feels like you're riding a horse, right? Like you're like, oh my God, like this journey is something. But it's the greatest time to be alive, like the greatest time in history. People are waking up every day. There's things to be excited about. And I understand about the chaos in the world, but at the same time, if it ain't in your if it ain't, in your immediate area, there's really nothing that you can do about any of it.
Right. Well, and I think that even that is why I chose to start helping people, right? Like when
Mm-hmm.
we look at the chaos that's
Yeah.
happening in the world right now. I mean, I was even watching a movie the other day, and before I even found the movie I decided to watch, all the movies are
Yeah.
about death or shootings or
Mm-hmm.
criminal activity or the world's going to end. I mean, this is what we're absorbing. And we wonder why we're in a place to where we feel more disconnected than ever, and not even disconnected from people, disconnected from source. And because this is the energy that we're in, and this is the very energy that causes anxiousness, that causes fear. And this is our operating system. And that was the one I was living on, and so many people are living on, that this huge awakening has to happen. But we have to recognize where that anxiousness is coming from to start. We have to be willing to witness ourselves, the way that we're being, the way that we're behaving, the way we're treating people, the way we're
Yeah.
treating ourselves. And if we can't do that, the awakening it's really hard.
Yeah, I think that's why it has been, over the last at least 7 years. I'm looking and I'm like, gosh, well, I mean, I think we've come a long way, but at the same time, it's like you see things falling away. At least I see things, I observe that. And I think the reason that I do observe that is because I zoomed out. I zoomed out and became the observer of the shit show. And when you can observe it from like up in the nosebleeds, right? And you're seeing all this stuff and you see that like some of these things are just, you talked about it. Hollywood is the predictive programming machine. They're not our friends. They're not people to be worshipped like they're actually doing something to change the needle or move the needle for humanity. Like, well, how do I know that? look at where we've been. If they're doing anything for humanity, show me.
Right. And I
Like,
think it is
show me.
important to, I think it is important to, we do need
And
the
let me
paradox.
just, yeah, absolutely. I think we do need the paradox. And not to interrupt you, but I do want to say this real quick. And I'm not picking on all actors and actresses. Okay, I'm picking. They know who they are. That's all I'm saying. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, but I mean, just as I was with a client the other day and was talking about this aspect that I use with clients a lot, where we run towards pleasure and we run away from pain,
Yes.
and but we deem pleasure the known and we deem pain the unknown, right?
Right.
And so I asked her this question. I said, if you for how many days and years of your life have you woken up every day and the sun has risen? She's like, well, all of them. And I'm like, okay, so that's a known, right? You know that you're going to wake up tomorrow and the sun is going to rise. Now, if you woke up tomorrow and the sun didn't rise, how would that feel? She was like, horrifying. And I was like, because that would now become an unknown. So now you deem unknown things in your life horrifying. You just gave it language. And
That's
when
deep.
we don't know how things are going to turn out, it's really painful for us.
Yeah.
And that might mean changing who we are when we wake up the next day, that we're not going to react to our partner in the same way. That's an unknown. It's small things, right? But like, it's so comfortable being this version of ourselves that we have turned out to be, that being anything other than that is horrifying. And we don't know how to change it because we've programmed ourselves to be this way, to be in fear, to be anxious, to control things, to expect outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. That is that's some wisdom right there. It is so true. It's this, and it's also it's this need for control on top of that, need for control, but out of control,
Right.
right?
For sure. I mean, when I was an extremely anxious person, having, 15 panic attacks a day, the only thing I had was my control. But that very control was the very thing that was also keeping me locked in my own prison. And, it's kind of those like waking up and making sure all of your ducks are in a row. And if your ducks aren't in a row and something gets moved, then that's out of control, right? So it's like in this idea, I felt so out of control because I didn't know when the next panic attack was going to happen, but I needed to control everything in case it did.
Yeah. I haven't had that many panic attacks in a day. I can't even imagine, but I have had panic attacks and they are not fun.
No.
And it's almost it's so hard to well, for me, when I had them, they were like, it was like my mind was racing and it was like downloading things. And I just like so fast, like super fast, like a computer, like you could hear that, like just, or like kind of how they do sort money. That's the sound I would hear, the sorting of the money on the money machine. And, and,
Mm,
and just like, what the heck is going on? Everything was just moving so fast at that time. And that was after my mom passed. I started to have these panic attacks. And I think I look back now and I realize, oh my gosh, there was so much information that had I been where I am now in a state of self-awareness, that I could have really dissected some things during those situations. And yeah, absolutely agree with you that there's surrendering to the process, like that's the half the battle, like letting go of and saying, okay, I'm done with the suffering, but also understanding that when you're peeling back, and I always talk about this peeling back, when you're peeling back those layers, how painful that is, knowing that there is going to be a little bit of suffering with that, but the suffering with that is the letting go. And in that process of letting go of these things that no longer serve you, like not speaking up when someone mispronounces your name, when you start to peel that back, it's like,
But
it's
even
so
this
true.
shift that you're talking about,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
when people decide, right, when you're truly going to surrender, when you're going to let this go, most people don't decide to do that until things hit rock bottom. And it's sad that, we have to have things like cancer or diseases or trauma or loss happen in our life to make these decisions. Most of the time, that's the acting piece, because our subconscious, by the time we're 35 years old, is 95% of our mind. And
yeah,
so 5% is only the conscious part that can actually make the decision to change, right? When we think about losing weight and we're like, oh, we'll try something for a couple of weeks, but ultimately the subconscious program takes over and wants you to remain the same. And so it's literally like taking a teaspoon and trying to move a mountain
yeah,
with choice. And it can be really hard if you're just doing that consciously. And so the letting go, you're either in a place where you're like, I would almost rather die than continue going down this road, or you have so much willpower to push that needle just enough to get beyond that operating system that you've created. Because it is hard when you're peeling back those layers. It is painful to witness parts of yourself and to experience parts of yourself. But to me, what's even more painful is staying the same.
God, I can't even echo that enough because it's so true. That truly is the definition of insanity. When you continue to do the same thing, oh, and I've been there,
And expecting a different outcome.
and expecting a different outcome. And I used to be there. I used to live there.
I think so many of us did. It's Groundhog Day.
Yeah, and thought I knew everything about everything, and then I realized I don't know shit. I don't know shit. I don't. And I'm cool with that. I am cool with not knowing everything. But what I do know, I know, because I love to research, and that's the thing. And I love to learn, right? And I think there needs to be an openness about that too with this journey, is that, yeah, you finally get to a point where you slams up against the wall and you're like, I am done. And that's kind of where I was. I was like, I was like, I was literally having a literal meltdown, like a 2-year old tantrum. It was like I tapped into that inner child and I had a temper tantrum and I was like, I'm done. Fuck it. I'm done. And I just sat there and I'm like, let's go. I'm like, I'm done, God, like take me. I don't know what else to do. And then it was like,
But that's always the defining moment.
yeah,
The
yeah.
moment that you actually invite in something other than yourself.
Yep. When you drop all the bullshit and it's just you're stripped down and you're like, I don't know what is true. Like I don't know what is this. I don't know what that is. And I don't, whatever it was that I said. And it was like the greatest thing that ever happened in that moment. It was like, okay, well, here you go. And it was like I would just listen to my intuition. I would listen to that your intuition is your higher self. And
But I
it's,
think even
yeah,
being willing to open the doorway for something to come in to open up another possibility for yourself. And, it might not even be in that moment that something is delivered to you. It might be 24 hours later. It might be 5 minutes later. It might be 6 months later. Being open and willing that something can change. It's in that defining decision making of I'm letting go of control. I've now decided that it cannot just be me running this show anymore. And maybe you don't even know what that looks like or if that's with a higher power or anything. But I think even for me, like whenever I started just even breathing through my panic attacks and the breathing itself let me calm down. Like something came and dropped the seed of doing breath work for me, right? It wasn't just someone offering it as a suggestion, right? That was delivered by a higher power as here's the first step that actually you need to take to even be willing to open up to a possibility that this bigger thing exists.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks that I talk to about their journey, there is that similarity there, that of that, what it's like, that the moment of surrender and then stepping in. And you're absolutely right. Like, it's like you may just be there for 24 hours. It might happen 5 minutes later, whatever it may be. And then it's like everything that happens after that
Is a
point
stepping stone.
is like boom, boom, boom. God brings it into your orbit. It's like, what? Oh my God. Then another thing. Then, and it's just along the journey, right? And I think that,
Because now you're open to things looking different, where
right,
before it was
right.
that idea, that horrifying, that like if the sun didn't come up today things would be horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now you're seeing, oh, I actually did something different. One of the teachers I really changed my world was Joe Dispenza.
Mm.
In one of his books he talks about just getting up on the other side of the bed every day, brushing your teeth with your left hand instead of your right. Like, can you just change some of the ways you do things to be open to other things working differently? And I feel like that's such a mind shift of, do you know what it actually feels like to brush your teeth with your left hand? It's pretty awkward.
Yeah.
But when you can get used to the awkward, then you start inviting other things in as well.
Yeah. That's a brilliant idea, because it does kind of trick the brain into, okay, well, what's okay, now I've done this, I mastered this, and then, well, what's next? Let me see if I can change something else up. And that's the thing. I think we're just so, some folks are so afraid of change when they don't realize that that's what we're here to do.
Well, and I think that right there is the first podcast I ever had was called The Uncharted Way. And to me, that was defying the societal norms of the American dream. Of we were taught that we are supposed to, go through grade school, go to college, meet the man of our dreams or partner of our dreams, get married, have the job, have the house with a white picket fence, and then retire. But like, where's all of the gray area in between? And what if we don't follow that thing? And I think that, like, for me in my own life, I was feeling resistance towards what that was, which was also anxiety. And I didn't know how to live another life because that was the life that I saw, right? Like, you look at magazines and celebrities, you're supposed to have these perfect bodies. And if you don't, then what? You're not enough. If you don't have this American dream, then you're not enough. You haven't made it, right? And we're all looking for this feeling of being worthy. We want to feel worthy. But we have created a world around us that tells us all the time that we're not, because we don't look like this, or we didn't succeed like this, or we didn't create these goals, or we didn't have this many children. And to me, success is actually defying that very paradigm as it is and finding what actually is your own freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. I resonate with that. That was pretty deep. Archie Lou's getting sassy over here. I resonated with that, what you just said, because I didn't fit that mold. I went into the Air Force, right after high school, and spent 7 years active duty, then got out and went to school and all of that. And yeah, I was engaged twice. I'm a runaway. I'm like, that's why they call it an engagement, folks. You're not you can change your mind at any time. That's why they call it an engagement. So, it's finding out if that's the person that you want to, spend it with. But anyway, that wasn't my purpose. And then it's like all of a sudden I'm in my mid 40s and I'm like, what's going on? Like my mother had passed when I was 28. My father wasn't doing well. And by 48, my father passed away. And so it's like, what? This isn't what I thought my, I didn't, is this what my life was supposed to be? And now I look back at it that, our lives are, it's an experience, right? And it doesn't fit anybody's mold. There is no effing mold. Our creator created us to be unique, to have a unique experience, whatever that looks like. But this system that we live in, it tells us, well, if you haven't had kids, you're this. Or if you haven't had kids by 40, you're this. If you're doing this, as a man, I'm just making, examples. If you're doing this as a man, then you're wrong. If you're doing that as a woman, then you're wrong. It's like, who says?
Right.
Because
Who says?
these are all mortals that are telling us the way that we should be living our life, when really the way we should be living our life is to, if you haven't read the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Thomas is writings that are directly from Jesus. And it's like, you can even look in the scripture where it's talked about. I can't remember what verse. I could look it up afterwards, but talking about that we have to go within. There is no separation from God. We can go to God anytime. And for some reason, we have been brainwashed, conditioned, whatever you want to call it, to that we have to outsource that. That
Right.
I need somebody in the middle of me and God. Are you kidding me? I haven't
Well,
had anybody in the middle since I've been on this journey.
I think even, what you're saying, right? The
Ah,
confines of control and like the society that we're living in, right? All of the, and this is my own personal views, all of the big players in our country they want us to stay in fear
they do.
so that we are more easily controlled. That if we fear something, we are going to listen to what's being said, right? Think about COVID
Oh,
and how everybody was glued to the TV, waiting for, is this virus moving to my area? All of these things. And what is that? That's causing fear. And as a hypnotherapist, you are more suggestible when you are in a survival state than when you are in homeostasis. And so this time period of this pandemic, we were all in survival. We were all taking in all of the information as that was going straight into our subconscious. We were glued. We believed all of these things. But this is also the time that actually gave people to really start questioning things, right? Things weren't going as planned, or, medications weren't working as they said, or were causing more problems. And so then we start to question. And I think this is really the age of people starting to waking up, of the people who are quote unquote in power are not actually having our highest welfare, like in their best eyes. And people are seeing that. And so I think that this is actually what's allowing people to wake up more and to invite another thing. Because if we are going within, if we're actually getting wisdom from the greatest source of all, we're not going to listen to these people in power. And that's when things are going to crumble. And that's when, there might be unknowns and unpredictability, but this is where change happens. Chaos happens before order,
big
and you
time.
have to be willing to step into the chaos.
It's interesting that in stepping into the chaos. I did a lot of that in 2020. I was, well, I'm a veteran, and I've had a father that was a Marine. So yeah, do I have a little bit of military programming? Yeah, I do. There's some generational stuff there too, but there's also wisdom and there's also history.
For
And
sure.
if you know your history and you know the games they've played in the past, and when I say they, I'm talking about those that have power, and with power because they have the money, they can control, right? And I just was like, oh, no, 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 no. I saw right through it. I was in New York City when it happened, and I'm looking around in the busiest city in our country. And it's like the crowds are thinning over the week, and I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm just looking and I'm like, and at that time I was like 75 days sober. I hadn't had anything to drink. So I was like nothing. And I'm like, something ain't right. Something ain't right. And it was like my intuition said, girl, this is all bullshit. And hindsight being 2020, that was all a psyop. It was all meant to instill fear. And rewind back, I left New York City and I'm on my way to LaGuardia, and it takes 15 minutes to get there because there's nobody on the highway. And I get on a plane and there's 5 people on the plane, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I thought to myself, okay, I've always kind of been one of those that connects the dots kind of people. I've always been a kid that likes to research things. I was working in research. So I'm like connecting the dots. I'm like critically thinking. I'm like, what's going on here? And then I was like, okay. Okay. And then it's like, oh, yeah, 14 days to slow the curve. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you're going to get 14 days. And then after the 14 days, you're done, because we already know this in history. We already know this from history. So that's kind of where I was at. So 14 days came and went, and it was like just this like divine lion came from within me, and I wasn't a nice person. I was not. I was questioning. I was questioning people. I was asking people to question why they were doing the things that they were doing. And so then I was like the enemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, all this. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I know I know. I have this inner knowing. I know. I know that there's something not right here. And so I think probably by beginning of May, I was just kind of sitting there like I do. I guess you could call it a form of meditation. I hadn't started really learning to meditate until the summer of 20. So by May, I'm like, you know what? Something came to me, rebel, rebel, rebel. So I said to my brother and my sister-in-law, I said, well, guess what? I'm going to plan a trip, and we're going to fly into Seattle, and we're going to drive the entire Pacific Coast Highway. This is a perfect time to do it. Nobody's on the road. Everybody's locked up. Let's go. And they're like, what? And I'm like, we're going. That's it. We're going. So we did. And we didn't really have any issues except for one night we couldn't stay out on the coast because there were no hotels that were open. So we had to come back into Portland, and we stayed a night in Portland. The rest of it was, I mean, we didn't really have that many issues with really anything, like with the mask or anything. And look, the mask, I was like, no, that non-negotiable. I ain't doing it. Oh, like it's a law. Well, show me where the law is.
Right.
Don't tell me. Show me.
Something keeping us from a vital life
Yeah.
force we
I'm
actually
like,
need.
no,
Yeah.
no, I'm not
In the
wearing
out in the
your
open,
mask.
especially.
I'm not sick.
For sure. I think even just you talking about the questioning, I think that is one of the biggest things to really invite into any sort of shift, change, transformation, is being willing to start asking questions, being willing to be curious. Like, why is this happening? Or why am I acting like this? Why am I behaving like this? I always say one of my biggest aha moments was I have a sister who's 3 years older than me. Especially when I was at my worst with my anxiety, she was always my person, and she could help me get out of a panic attack. And so I was a little codependent with her at the time because I would call her up so often. And at the time, I lived in Dallas, she lived in Austin. And so we would drive down and see her. And, as sisters do, we fight about things. And because of the version that I was being at the time, this control freak. I was very black and white. I was very much my way or the highway because this was all the control bubble that I lived. And if I had to step out of that bubble, I usually was a bitch, point blank. And I remember this one trip that we had, we were having an argument and I said some things that were not nice. And because I was needing to be right, I was needing to stay in my control, and she didn't like it. And this was the first time ever in our lives that she had said, Sari, you're being a fucking bitch. And I just like couldn't believe that she just said that to me. Like that just came out at my face. And we ended up leaving and driving home. And we didn't end up speaking for at least 3 weeks. And for that version of myself who was having multiple panic attacks a day, this was the hardest time in my life to not have my person that could help me get out of a panic attack. But I was choosing my like rightness, my control over repairing our relationship. And at some point in this 3 weeks, I started questioning, why am I hurting someone I love so much? And like to the point that we're not speaking. Like, why is it that like I need to be right? Why is that worth getting in the way of our love, our sisterhood, our connection? And I realized at the time that I was just a really aggressive person and not in a good way. And I remember seeing this one Instagram post where it was comparing aggressive people and their traits on one side, and then there was an assertive version and that person's traits on one side. And I remember being in my kitchen with my husband and like putting my phone down and showing it to him and being like, I know I'm the aggressive one. I really want to be the assertive one. I don't know how that's going to happen, but just having that like questioning that like, why am I doing this? Why am I hurting someone? And really realizing in that it was because of my own anxiety, my own fear, my own control. And I don't want to keep hurting people in my life. So if I'm going to speak my needs or still be in my control, how can I be assertive where people can actually hear what I'm saying versus aggressive where that's just coming with like knives? And that was, just being willing to question. That's what opened the doors for everything. That's opened the door for God to bring in, maybe even show me that Instagram post that I saw and give me this sort of contemplation on who I was being.
Yeah.
And in that same way that you were like, I'm going to rebel. This isn't right.
I'm like, hell no. I'm like, this is smelling a little bit like communism and I ain't down for it. A rebel. That's kind of how I felt. It was like, we're rebelling. And I'm glad that we did, because I think it's interesting. You piece that together and it's like, I know why that happened. I know why why it happened, because now we're out here. We're in the Pacific Northwest. I would have, if you would have told me 5 years ago I'd be living outside of Portland, I would have said, hell no, I would not. Are you kidding me? Never been here before. It's a beautiful area. Yeah, I would have never guessed. And that's the thing, like you have to, when you're open like that, man, things just start to shift. And I think that we're doing a big disservice to ourselves when we are listening to that programming device in our homes, that we need to shut it off and go back and recalibrate, go back to nature, recalibrate, connect with your creator, and then you're going to learn what the truth is.
Yeah. And this is why, podcasts like this exist, right? We are in a world where information is so readily available that like your news channel is not the only place that you have to get information anymore. You get to decide where you want to get it. And I think that was the other big piece. I mean, that's where I found my first teacher, being Joe Dispenza, was on a podcast, and just willing to start consuming the information I actually want to consume. I mean, there's a program that a group program that I have, and the first module that we have is, what are you consuming? What is your Facebook feed look like? What does your social media feed? Who are the people in your life? What is the food you're consuming? What's the energy and emotions you're consuming? And being able to look at everything and decide, oh, this isn't working for me. Let's do some spring cleaning. What do you want to consume? What do you want to allow into your own energetic field? But if we're not doing that inventory, we're just going to keep showing up the same.
Yeah, it's so true. It is so true. So when your situation happened and you were having these panic attacks and you started to do like the work, and what did that look like? Did you start journaling? Did you start meditating? Did you start just being sitting in silence and taking inventory of what was going on in your life, which, like a mental journal? Like, what did that look for you?
I think so much. And I think that this is where I personally, with all my clients I work with first, and I think everybody should work with is, we have our nervous system. We have two different nervous systems. We have our sympathetic nervous system and we have our parasympathetic. And being someone who was in chronic survival, I was in my sympathetic nervous system 24/7 if I wasn't sleeping. And even my sleep was so horrible. I had programmed to be in this heightened state 24/7. So we can't think logically when we're in this state. And I alluded to, if you think about a lion chasing a zebra in the savannah, if the zebra gets away, it just goes back to grazing naturally. But if it's being chased, it's in this heightened state of like, I have to run for my life. But now we're living in this state where that lion is maybe the cubicle next to us. That lion is our mother or our partner. That lion is our own thoughts in our own head. And we are in this fight or flight survival state 24/7. So we wonder why we have disease. We can't rest and repair and regenerate and digest. We have to be getting into these parasympathetic states. And these are the states that we have the downloads, we have the ideas that flood in. But if we can't get into those states, we're just fueling cortisol, we're just fueling adrenaline, we're fueling all of these stress hormones in our body. And I was doing that 24/7. And I was also wondering why I was getting diagnosed with hypothyroidism and polycystic ovarian syndrome and things of this nature, because I was in fight or flight 24/7. So I think the biggest thing is to really just, and I always say I come back to the breath, and I teach this to everyone, and not everybody loves breath, but just breath to just slow your body down. If we actually slow down, we might have to deal with our thoughts. And that's really scary for people sometimes too. Because of this heightened state that I was in, when I actually started slowing down, to me, like I do a simple thing. You might know this, Jay. It's called the box breath. It's super simple. It's just 4 counts in, breathing in, holding it for 4 counts, and exhaling for
Do
4
you want
counts
to
and holding
demo
it.
it?
Sure, we can do that. So I just want to preface that if you're driving in the car listening to this, to not close your eyes, but that you can still do it while driving. This was actually a huge relief for me while I was in the car, because the majority of my panic attacks actually happened in the car. So if you're not driving, feel free to close your eyes. And I want you to just breathe all of the air out of your nose. And we're going to inhale slowly for 4 counts. Breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4, holding at the top for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. We're going to exhale slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Let's do it one more time. Slowly breathing in, really expanding your diaphragm, which is your belly, not so much your chest. Holding at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slowly exhaling. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. And you can do that as many times as you like. And the important thing about this is it takes about 90 to 120 seconds to get chemical emotions like cortisol and adrenaline out of your body. So if you were to use this breath, hitting that 90 seconds, you would be able to flush all of those chemical emotions out of your body. And this was the very thing that actually allowed me to start getting into the parasympathetic state in my body. And this is when we can slow down. We can start signaling to your body that it can rest, it can digest, it can repair, and it doesn't have to be in stress or fight or flight. And this is when everything in my body composition started changing, started losing weight, started so many things because I wasn't fighting for my life every single day. I wasn't being chased by the lion every single day. By the lion every single day.
Because
so
in
to me,
reality,
this is
we're not being. It's an
right,
illusion,
right,
right?
right.
And I think that I'm not saying that there aren't things that are happening, but they're not happening right there. The fight or flight is something that we need, absolutely. And it was meant for survival, absolutely. But it's being triggered on a daily because of the things that we are taking in. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the whole breath work, I love breath work. I think connecting to your breath is a life changer, especially if you're one of those that needs a little anger management. I'm your
Yeah.
girl. You
Yeah.
know, I've been there where you're just like, you literally lose your shit.
Yeah.
Been there many a time. The breath work can help so much, and it's pretty amazing. And there's so many different types, right? Like I studied with the Newman Institute for a little bit for transpersonal psychology, and we did a lot of amplified states of consciousness. So a lot of what we did was just oxygen and shamanic drums. There's opportunities if you want to, go on retreats and do the ayahuasca and all of that, but yeah, I personally don't recommend all of that until you really get the foundation down, and the foundation can be this, or 7 seconds in. Another one that I like is 7 seconds in, 7 seconds out.
Absolutely. Whatever, there's so many different rhythms and there's so many different ways, and it's literally about finding the way that works for you.
Yeah.
And not fighting how you should be doing it or anything like that. But if you are noticing that you are ending in a different state than when you began, it's working. And it doesn't take very long. We don't have to be Buddhist monks and stay in, no thoughts, no nothing for hours and days of that nature. We just have to be able to calm our nervous systems. And, I offer people this 4-step awareness process. That's, to me, the work is, and we can go and we can have therapy sessions and even hypnosis sessions. I tell my clients that my sessions are not magic wands. It's about the work that you're doing in between. We can go and have, plant medicine ceremonies and things like that. What are you doing after it? How are you taking what you learned and applying it and integrating it into your life? And it's so important that we are aware of how we're feeling in our body. Subconsciously, our body is our subconscious mind. And so if we are, let's just say you're having a conversation with someone, Jay, maybe it's me in this podcast, not likely, but let's just say you notice you're triggered. What is the first thing that you feel in your body? Do you feel like a tightness in your chest? Do you feel a contraction? Do you feel it in your stomach? Do you feel your shoulders begin to tense up? This is the first key when we're triggered. Your hands.
No, whenever I start to feel triggered, like I'm like, now I've got it down to an art form. It hits me in my gut. And then I'm like, okay, where's this coming from? I ask myself in my head, I'll ask myself, where is this coming from? Where's this coming from? And then from there, you just ask more questions. It's like you get to a point where it's like questions, even in your head. You don't even have to say it out loud. I mean, if you're by yourself, like I talk to myself, I'm not crazy, but I do
Right.
talk to myself, like, where is this coming from? What's this attached to? I'll ask myself a lot, like, what's this attached to? Is this about
And
me?
sometimes this is
Whatever it may
where,
be.
yeah, and this is where I sometimes insert something like a breath technique to help. Because if we're in fight or flight, and even if we're asking those questions, we're probably not going to get anything logical that's going to come through. So sometimes we need to slow down and then ask the questions. And, it's so important to just even identify that I'm feeling something in my body, because that's the first trigger. If we can't begin to identify that, the other thoughts are going to hijack us and we're probably going to spiral into something. But if we can first just become aware that we're feeling something in our body and then start to ask the question, where is this coming from? Have I created a story about it? Is this not even true?
Yeah.
And then, I always like to say, especially for those who can't really get on with source or the universe or God, asking your highest self, is this true? And you will get a definitive answer if you've slowed down your nervous system and then you start asking, is this true?
Isn't it fascinating?
Yes.
It's like when you start to learn that that's really what it is. We are frequency and vibration, energetic beings having a human experience, you start to really realize, like, whoa, like I truly do, like it's amazing. I look at it like it came to me this morning when I was in the shower. And I was like, you know what? We are the superheroes. We are the superheroes that are doing the work to heal ourselves. And as we heal ourselves, our creator is giving us our superpowers. And it's an amazing thing.
Yeah. And it's like so available to us. But if we're living in, our victim mentality, or we're living in our unworthiness or our blame or our judgment, it's really hard to have access to all of that.
So you speak of victim mentality. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
What were some of the conversations that you had in your head about that in the victim mentality? Why is this happening to me?
I mean, I think even just coming from a place of, I grew up as a dancer, and as a dancer, you're looking for validation a lot by your craft, by your art form. Am I the best? Am I doing this right? Growing up in that lifestyle, it was always an outside validation. It was never internal. And then I moved to LA when I was like 17 years old. I'm going to
Ooh,
become the next Britney Spears backup dancer. That's what I had in my mind. And I was a great dancer, believe me. But moving out to LA, you became the tiny fish in a really big ocean, because everybody out there is moving out there for that. And everybody out there is really good at what they do. And I did not have any internal foundation. And so when I moved out there and I wasn't getting picked for auditions, and I was this really young girl who moved out of state to a world that she didn't know, but she had a lot of confidence at the time. But the minute that confidence got busted, she fell apart. And it was, how come I didn't get picked? Why am I not the best one? And then all of that unworthiness starts to flood in, of who am I if I'm not this, right? We grow up in these identities, and my identity at the time was I'm this badass dancer. And then the minute that got knocked down, who was I? And then just it starts building on you, like, okay, your body type's not enough. Your friends are not enough. Like all of these things, like nothing is enough, because you now are the victim of your life because you don't feel worthy. I don't even know that I knew what feeling worthy was at the time, because it's so much easier to look externally and be the victim of the reality you're living in instead of taking ownership and deciding to change.
So true. So true.
I mean, people have it with relationships. Why doesn't he want me? Why doesn't she want me? Why didn't I get the promotion? All of the things. It's so easy to be the victim of the realities we live in.
When, if we just shifted a little bit, and I'm speaking this from experience because that's happened to me too, right? Like, I mean, I wasn't a dancer, but I did sing. I did audition for The Voice. I auditioned for, what was it, X Factor at the time, and it's like it does set you up for, like, with all these folks over here, like, oh, you're amazing, and then you go and it's like crickets. But now I know. Well, thank God I got passed over, knowing what I
Yeah.
know now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just
100%.
like I'm grateful because I mean, sure, there's people that go out in their craft and they move audiences and things like that. There's certain people throughout history that have done that. But I think that having the ability to work with people, just normal everyday people, I think is such a cool thing.
Because we all have something, just
Yeah,
because we're not quote unquote in the spotlight,
yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah,
even me, like, I run a one on one hypnotherapy practice. I do have a podcast, but like, I'm not someone who's, working with celebrities or bringing in $1 million clients, because to me, my role is working with everyday people who need to change something in their lives. And because of, I definitely even think that my experience moving out to LA and having my whole world get knocked down was the beginning of the transformation of who I am today.
yeah,
And as you said, like, I wouldn't have it be any other way, because this version of myself today wouldn't exist if it wasn't for her. And because I now know what it's like to go through the mud, to literally crawl your way through, I can empathize and I can support people so much more because I've been through it. I understand the exact thing that you're going through.
yeah. It's interesting. Where do you think we're going to be? Where do you think we're going to be a year from now? I think it's going to be. I think we're going to be in a better place a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now.
I mean, I think, again, it's all a perception, right? Like, the hologram is all projected from your internal. And so for me, there are some horrible things going on in the world, and that I don't want to dim a light on that. I send love to all of the families that are experiencing that. And the reality that I have created for myself on my projection screen, the hologram I get to live in, it's pretty fucking great over here. And so, and it's great because what's happening inside is reflecting a world that's great. I'm not living in fear, right? I'm not consumed by all the things that are happening. I mean, there was recently, about a week ago in Austin, there was a shooting, and it was horrible. People died, right? And again, my condolences to their family and everything like that. And grateful that no one I knew was in that experience. That doesn't mean that people didn't get hurt or potentially die and all these things, but I think that all of these situations are catalysts for people to wake the fuck up and decide life is short. And also, one of the things with my anxiety, one of my biggest fears was fear of death. Was that at the end of my life, like, there was just nothing. And that made me hold on to this very life so much and create so much control, because the idea of that just being finite and over scared the shit out of me. And I think a lot of people feel that. And what I know now is that this life is only one, but what happens after it is infinite, just like the life cycle of, you know, our seasons. We go, we bloom, we blossom, we're alive, we're experiencing life, and then things die again. But that just because things die doesn't mean that it's over. It's a circle. It's happening all the time. And so I think that with that, those people died. And again, this is like another tangent. We could talk on a whole nother subject of
I think I
these
want to.
people.
I'm tabling it because I'm gonna bring it up when you're done. I'm like, we got to do a podcast on that.
Yeah, because I think that like for the people that like, now granted, if anyone in my direct family were to die tomorrow, would it be awful? And would I grieve? What I would grieve their physical presence, absolutely. But like I also like there's a part of me. There's a great book if you've never read it, I highly suggest it. It's called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers, and it just talks about like this. It's about a brother who he dies, but he comes back and he's talking to his sister the whole time, and in spirit form. And like I think about that. I think about these possibilities of like just because let's just say somebody died in my family, they might come back and be like guidance for me or something like that. And so it doesn't have to be over. And they wouldn't want me to live the rest of my life sad by grieving them either. And so when I hear things like shootings or things of that nature happening, I don't see them as like this horrible, awful thing. I see them as a wake up call for the communities that surround that person that thing happened to, because now this is your chance that you get to decide that life is short and you get to decide how you want to live it. And it's time to wake the fuck up. This is why disease happens. This is why cancer victims have these growth moments, because life is right in front of them. You get to decide.
Yeah, it's so true. Now you brought up the hologram, and I'm like, oh, I want. Have you read the Gateway Process, the CIA document that was declassified?
I have not.
Okay, I'm going to send that to you. We're going to do a podcast on it because you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the whole hologram. We live in a holographic world. It was basically it was a study done by the Monroe Institute, and they basically confirmed. So it's been confirmed, and this consciousness thing is not a woo-woo thing. It is absolute science. It is quantum.
Absolutely.
It is quantum mechanics and physics, whatever you want to call it, and it's absolutely fascinating. So we should talk about that on a podcast because I'm like, oh, she knows about that. She's got to know about that. But no, so it's and so then you ask yourself, because I know we've talked about the whole government thing a little bit, we've alluded to it, that you ask yourself if our government has known this information since 1983, because that's when the gateway process was looked at. Can't remember the name of it was an army, I believe an army psychiatrist. 1983, they've had this information. It was declassified in 20, I believe in 20. So why? And then they left out page 25, which talks about the whole. I mean, it's just so you have to ask yourself, okay, why would they withhold this type of information if this is truly what our experience is? Why would
Yeah.
they? Right? Because then we wouldn't be outsourcing and having a go in between,
Yeah.
telling a
Absolutely.
mortal telling me that what God is when I already know what God is because I've experienced it. It's an experiential thing, right? And it's about being open. But like even when you talk about these things that really aren't in the mainstream, right? It's like been coined conspiracy theorist. It's not. How is that a conspiracy theory when it's been basically studied? There's evidence. If we're going to trust the science, then let's fucking trust the science. And science just isn't beakers and whatever. It's other things.
Well,
It's
that's why, I
energy,
mean,
it's vibration, it's all of
that's
that.
That's why I was so attracted to Joe Dispenza's work in the beginning,
He's
because
phenomenal.
his work was science based. And for the version of myself that actually really needed help, all of the woo woo things that I'm
Yeah.
into now, the version of me that started this path needed the science to be able to open up my mind. I needed evidence that this is possible. And now, like, he has
Yeah.
EEG, scans and so many things that he's doing all this research. And it's not just him. There's so many other groups now. I mean, we actually have universities that are studying the mind body connection and consciousness and so many things that, like, this is getting out,
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I would
Right.
love to have, I would, that would be like, that would be a tower moment to have him on. That would be like so cool because he's kind of one of the pivotal people that have really been talking about this whole concept of human consciousness on a main stage, right? Where
Yeah.
it's
And then even I've been listening to, I don't know if you've listened to before, and I really just started it within the past week and a half, but I've been listening to the telepathy tapes, which are all based off of autistic nonverbal children, that they are telepathic and they're proving this. And, there's all of these interviews by these clinicians and doctors and teachers that were potentially throwing themselves under the bus, losing their job because they're talking about that this is happening, and they're testing this with these children. And these moms of these children are telling them, like, oh, they're absolutely reading my mind, and that this level of consciousness is available. But we have so much noise going
yeah,
on, and we have decided that we are only going to believe the reality that our eyes see. There's
right.
someone recently who told me the reason why we close our eyes and meditate is so that we actually allow ourselves to see through God's eyes, because our eyes deceive us.
So true.
And I
It's
just love that.
so true, but it's so true, right? I tell you, I'm like, if I could bottle up everything and give it to people, I would do it, and I would give it for free. But I can't. You got to do the work.
You still got a
I
social
can be
security
there and
number.
support people. I literally can. Like I'm good at that, where I can support people and walk them along the journey and encourage them along the way. But uh, yeah, it's definitely something that you gotta, you get to a point where you choose yourself, right? You choose yourself, but and a friend of mine reminded me of this. Dare to be second. Putting your creator first and then being second, right? Letting the creator be your navigator, and you can pilot, but you got to listen to your nav. I mean, anybody knows that you're going to listen to your nav, even if you don't have a navigator. I'm talking Air Force talk here. Even if you don't have a navigator, you still got a navigation system. So you're going to trust your navigation system, our inner guidance system. It never leads us down the wrong path. And the more that you can dial into that inner guidance system that says, hey, Jamie, take it easy, calm down, take a breath.
Right.
Like,
But
it's
we
not
have
that
so
serious.
many, like,
You'll,
there's everybody on their own little intercom trying to have their own idea of what you should do. And the dial on the real navigation, right, is down so low because we've turned it down, because we've been told to believe everything else, that it's in those quiet moments, in the breath, in the stillness, in the putting your phone away, go put your feet in the ground outside. And what is coming up? Can you turn the dial on whatever that is and let the real navigation system come and talk?
yeah. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And the thing is like, as you go through this, and let me ask you this: did you go through this where you started? Okay, you started doing the work, everything was great. You got to a point where it may have been spiritual bypassing, like, oh, it's all love and light, it's all love and light. and then it's like wham, the second round comes in and it's your second dark night of the soul, and you're going through all of that again, and you're like, what the heck is going on? And then bam, it's silence, nothing. You get nothing for like a period of time, and you're like, okay, but you're not love and light. You're just kind of like observing, and understanding like, no, it's not all love and light.
Well, that's that going back to this, paradox again that we kind of started with in the beginning a little bit of, in order to appreciate spring and summer, we have to have winter. In order to appreciate the sun coming up, we have to have darkness. Right? They can't coexist without each other, right? There's a level of gratitude that we wouldn't have if the other didn't exist.
Yeah. And it also,
And sometimes it's this love and light, it's not sustainable. And in order, it's kind of like if you look at like a stock market chart, right? If you were to really zoom out, even from the minute the stock market was created to today in 2026, if you zoomed out, the trajectory goes up over time. But if you were to zoom in, you're going to see all the little ups and downs, right? So I think that's the same thing as our life. And we don't have a destination, but we still have to experience the up and downs. And as we evolve ourselves, what was so love and light that first turn actually isn't as big as the one that you're going to experience 3 dark nights of the shadows down from now.
Exactly. And everything isn't easy. And I'm not saying it to be negative. My thing is, I want to speak the truth. I don't want folks to think like, this is so easy. I'm just going to, I think I think maybe that's the researcher in me that I'm like, you should have informed consent. You should know what you should know. And the only way that you're going to know is if you are out here sharing your story, I'm out here sharing my story, and we can get on board and we can do great things and have retreats and have some massive transformations, because I think there's so much of the population that went about these dark nights of the soul that now we kind of have that wisdom that we can share, that like, okay, people have more counsel, we'll say. I think people have more counsel now than what they had 12 years ago. Can you imagine being some of the souls that woke up initially and that have literally been awake their entire life? They woke up 30, 40 years ago, and they've just been not waiting around, but like living in a world that's just this matrix, right? And then they're like, I can't imagine how that was.
I think it's important to note too that like this counsel that you're talking of, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's listening to Jay's podcast or my podcast or reading, a Joe Dispenza book or Tony Robbins or Marianne Williamson, whoever it might be, to not pedestalize any of these people because of the work that they have done. Because I can tell you right now, I'm speaking lots of wisdom on this show. That doesn't mean that I'm going to get off this podcast interview and go deal with my 13-year-old who's dealing with a lot of stuff, and that I don't get triggered. I don't get activated. And it is a daily choice for me to wake up and decide who I'm going to be. Am I going to be the reactive person today? Am I in my moon cycle and hormones are fluctuated and I'm going to be really testy? Or am I going to wake up and am I going to invite, source energy into my day and allow it to guide me? And it's a choice every day. And just, whether it's us or whether it's these people who have written books and have all these, works of knowledge, they're having to do the same things too. And we're all equal. We're all one. We just have to remember that.
I got a barker over here. All right. That's enough. Okay. Are you done?
He says he likes it.
I'm like, I had to mute it because he's over here. He's wanting to be heard. He's wanting to exercise his his throat energy area. Yeah, he's a trip, that one over there. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's kind of what it's all about. Life doesn't stop. You just gotta, you figure it out. Like, and if you don't land, you're not expected to land perfect. Like, it can be messy, and that's fine, you know? And yeah, counsel could be someone you're going through the journey with. Counsel could be a coach. Counsel could be a therapist. Counsel could be a hypnotherapist. A counsel could be anyone, right? It's just that they're kind of, that's where they specialize, right? And so you can have so many people that you dial in into your healing journey. And that, I guess maybe what I want to make sure that folks understand is that you don't have to go it alone, right? An amazing space right now where people have done the work and are starting to step out, and there's more of us, which is great, because then there's going to be more that those folks can help eventually. I started my journey. I mean, I've been on my journey my entire life, but I think really started my journey 7 years ago. So, I'm just now stepping in, partly because I've listened to spirit, but I think I've had to heal too. The whole, you talked a little bit about reincarnation, label it that, but you were talking about that, and that is such a fascinating area. The whole past lives thing is such a fascinating area, because it's all energy that we carry with us, right? In our soul's journey, in lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And then your family, your generational like family, with who you have in each lifetime too, that you've orbited, right? That all of that. So many fascinating things to talk about. I'm just like loving it. It is a good time. Uh, I think, to be waking up, because even though I had folks, and I've had coaches along the way over the 7 years, like, if I didn't have those folks, I think to myself, my gosh, I don't think I could have done this by myself. And that's the thing, like you said it earlier, that things just start to happen. When you make that choice, things start to happen and people come into your orbit. You don't even know why. Like, true story, I was at a it's a market, farmers market, and I met this girl who ended up being, she was a facilitator for the Numa Institute out of Mount Shasta. This is where I learned the study of transpersonal psychology and breath work and all of that. So you never know who comes into your orbit. This is why it's so important for us to be out here sharing our story, because you never know who you're going to meet, who's going to come into your space at whatever time. And I look back at this journey and I think to myself, my goodness, like, I met that person during this time because of what I like. I can map it out, and you just think, wow. You may not see it as it's unfolding, but when you get a little bit out and you can zoom out, and you start like, whoa, that makes sense, and that makes sense, and that makes sense, and then it's like, those are times where you're just like, wow, I'm super grateful. Super grateful. It reinforces that I'm so grateful that I decided to choose myself.
Yeah.
And not in a conceited way, but in a way that I can, because here's the thing, is that in order for us to truly learn unconditional love, we must learn to love ourselves.
Right. Which is an act of selfishness in a way.
Yes, it is, but it's necessary in this journey,
It
because
is.
it does lead you back to, and why shouldn't you hold yourself reverence? Do you know who you are? Do you know who your creator is? You should absolutely hold yourself in the highest regard, because the creator that I know, amazing. And although we see chaos in the world, I really have to say this. If we have a creator that's all powerful, all knowing, omnipresent, then we could be ended at any time, right? Theoretically. But it hasn't happened. And so I think it hasn't happened because that is what mercy is. Like we're coming out of this fog, right? We're coming out of this anesthesia, if you will, right? Where the masses have been, uh, and we're starting to wake up, and it's like that in itself is mercy. I know that it's sometimes there's days it's like, and you probably go through it, so where you're like, oh my God. But when we look at it and we zoom out, and that's why I tell people when you get in those moments where you're like, just zoom out. And when you zoom out, it's like you think like God, and you realize, wow, how merciful. And then it's like, even with like the synchronicities in life, when you're out in nature and the spirit sends you certain birds or certain animals or whatever it may be to like communicate with you, to like, hey, you're on the right path or whatever. Like these don't happen by chance. They do not happen by chance. It's like when you're dialed in, you're aligned, and it's like it's an amazing thing. So
Absolutely.
it's this journey is not to be feared. It's hard, yeah, and it is the path less traveled, and it's the path less traveled for a reason, because not everybody has taken the path, and you have the choice of whether you want to take the path, and
Well,
I
I
just
think,
hope that people do.
yeah, and I think once you get on the other side and you realize it's not as scary as your ego deemed it to be, then you can continue walking through situations and
Yeah.
you get to evolve that experience. You get to learn. We were talking a little bit about the American dream before, and it's like this idea that, like, whether it's at high school or at college or whatever it is that you do in your learning world, we stopped learning. And to me, as I've craved information, I've wanted to learn more. I keep wanting to learn more because, as you said, we don't know anything. And to we're supposed to be evolving. We're supposed to, right? The light and love version of yourself that's present, that you came down from that high horse. You had to, because it's like one step back, two steps forward. You have to take that step back to get off your high horse, to remember who the fuck you are, and to be like, oh, I'm actually supposed to go further than I did the last time. But in order to do that, I need to learn something again.
It's so interesting where you say that, like, it's like, you said, it really hit me, it is hard, but it's rewarding. And at the same time, you get to a point where you're like super, like, you get this confidence that, well, a problem comes around, and then you're like, oh, I fucking got this. Let's go. I
Absolutely.
got solutions all day. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool when you're like, I know how to solve that. I don't have to lose my shit because this certain thing happened in my life today. I've got this. Okay. I might have to have a firm conversation, but that's okay. We can have a firm conversation. We can be kind and have a firm conversation at the same time. And it's a cool thing. Um, but yeah, yeah. It's like, man, you never know. Every day, you never know what's gonna happen, what you're gonna get, who you're gonna run into. It's like, yeah, what's going on? Who? Not saying be like a hyper vigilant where who's gonna trigger me today, but you just, you never know what the universe brings you. You go out and you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what message you're going to get, because we're all on our different stages, right? That's an amazing thing when you're out and about and can be somebody's angel for the day, confirmation, whatever it may be. Like it happens to me all the time. Somebody will say something, I'll say, "What did you say?" Whoa, oh my goodness, like that, I got confirmation. Things that, so this is all the more reason to just chill and be present. Chill and be present. Be present with your family, like Don't worry about, and I know that's a challenge when we have things that we have to do and calendars and all of that. We just try to maintain that presence, because we owe it. We owe it to ourselves. We owe to ourselves to be present, and for others to be present with us, especially in a world
100%.
where it's chaos and distractions and things like that. So I think that that's a good thing to practice, is like putting this thing away, like only giving yourself a certain amount of time and not being on it all the time, and getting out in the nature and doing all of that. Austin is a beautiful area. I did some survival training outside of Austin. It was, there is a Boy Scout like area. It's like a whole bunch of land. So it's some place where they do trainings and whatever. We did our survival. I did my survival training there for flight school out of Brooks Air Force Base, which I don't think is even operational anymore today, San Antonio. And so we took a drive up to that area, and I can't remember exactly where it was. I remember these things randomly. It's crazy.
I love it.
But yeah, it's like such a beautiful area down there, and it's very hilly. Yeah, it's
It is.
between Austin and like up near, like I think it's New, is it New Braunfels?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more north of there, in that hilly area.
It's so gorgeous. Yeah.
Maybe by Canyon Lake, I don't know. But yeah, we did some time up there. That was fun. 20 it was I think it was 20 degrees,
Oh boy.
and we had to sleep. It was not fun. It was not fun. And it wasn't fun, but it was an experience. I
That it
don't,
was.
I don't do well in the cold, but it was an experience. That's for sure. Yeah. It's a beautiful area. We have a beautiful country.
We do. There's so much I've yet to explore.
It's, I've done a lot of that, where I've traveled back and forth from Florida to Oregon over the past 6 years, since the whole COVID thing, and just meeting those people, right? Meeting those people that need confirmation, and I get confirmation. I mean, a creator doesn't just use one of us. Most of the time, it's both of us. We learn something from each other, which is
Right.
such an amazing thing, right? When we can learn from each other, if we're open, and we're willing to hear. There was a time that we were a little bit more open to each other's viewpoints, right? Perspectives, and that, I always say nothing is absolute but the creator. The creator is definitely absolute, that's for sure.
Yeah. We're just an extension of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And and to come into that understanding is pretty cool too. If you think about it, it's like, whoa, now I get it. I remember being in college and taking a philosophy class. I'm like, what's the meaning of life? And I'm like, what
Well,
is,
and you just weren't
what
ready
is,
to receive it yet, maybe,
yeah, like what? And I would always say, like, what? I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But now I know.
Oh, I can remember there was something that I took that was like, kind of along the same lines of like, who are you? And I was like, well, at the time I was like, well, I'm a dancer. No, not. I was like, I'm a daughter. No, who are you? And it kept like, and I was like, I remember being so frustrated of like, I don't understand the assignment, like, what is it that you're asking? And the version now absolutely understands probably what was being asked. But again, I think it's, there are some people who wake up as a child, and there are some people that wake up in their 60s. And there are some people, there's more, 20 somethings, 18 somethings
Yeah.
waking up now than ever. And I remember one of the first podcasts I ever listened to was this girl, and she, was a quote unquote entrepreneur at like 21. And I think I was probably like 30 something at the time. And I had my own judgments about her. And I was like, how can she be so, had all of this life experience at 21 and, I was creating my own judgments and ideas about her, but like the reality is that it is happening for some people at such a young age. And it's not about, I think there's someone in my family in particular who I think about, who is very much about, you only have the wisdom when you're older. And I remember in a conversation with this person just being like, I feel like I know more than you know right now. And it wasn't a, I'm better than you. It was just a, I'm actually just more open than you are right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of folks don't take into consideration the whole past life thing. That we have a lot of folks that are old souls, right? And they're remembering. And so there's that too. There's that piece. So yeah, that I think that piece of it, the spiritual bypassing, the conditioning of, well, we have to compare ourselves or we're in competition with each other and all of that. I think that's also been something that's just so false with regard to humanity. And it's definitely, definitely a mindset that we have to get out from under too. And that's a challenge too, right? That's a challenge because I know I've had it where I compare myself to other folks, like, oh, that person's so far ahead of me. And it's like, well, who says? They're not having the same experience you're having, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, the comparison thing, and that's all about division. That's, I think, number one, if we can admit that we have our egos have been infiltrated through psychological operations.
Yes.
That's a fact, Jack. That's a fact, Jack.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping, I'm going to put it out there in the airwaves, that I can hopefully maybe get somebody, I'm working on it, on here that is like military intelligence to talk about the whole psyops thing, because it's definitely going on. And we have two militaries, that too. So I don't think a lot of people know that. So yeah, there's just a lot of things. And when we know these things, then we're like, I think we're ahead of the game when we know these things are happening, because it's like, well, wait a minute, that's fake. That isn't even real. That's manufactured. That's just acting. Like when I turn on the TV anymore or I scroll on social media, I'm just like, oh gosh, the stage is a theater. It's a theater. The world is a stage. And to be able to get to that point where you see, like, you literally see like the pieces, the moves being made. It's like, whoa, yeah, I see what they're doing. So right now it's, I don't know, my thing is, I mean, even I'm saying it to myself and I know this, and I mean, I can look at stuff and I'm like, yeah, that's fake. But then I'm like, I don't even want to see it anymore. So when you talked about that earlier, about what are you taking in? What are you consuming? And is it really moving the needle for what it is that your purpose is, right? So all of this bullshit that I see on occasions has nothing to do with what I know that my creator has told me. And that's, get podcast guests, Jamie. All right, here we
Yep.
go.
Yep.
And that's what it is. Like, I don't need to worry about all the other shit because it will all line up. And I know it will. So if anything comes into my orbit that's going to take me away from doing that, then I have to say, no, you know what? That's not the best for the, yeah, I'm getting into military talk. That's not best for the mission, because we are on a mission, right? We're here to heal ourselves. And as a byproduct of healing ourselves, we can help others.
Yeah.
We can be of
Because
service to others.
it's a ripple effect.
Yep. And we just naturally flow and be and be of service to other folks. The moment we can step into our healing journey, we become servants of what this mission is about, and that's getting back into alignment. And so servants can be somebody serving a higher power of our creator, could be someone who's, you just speak your truth today to someone, and that just that little nugget of truth, it's like, Some people will just be floored. I've
Well, I
had that
think
where people are floored by what I say. They're like, what? Yeah. And you say
something
it
I heard
confidently.
recently, something I heard recently that was that I used to think of desires being bad. And this is more of our desires are expressions of the creator. Our
Yes.
desires are seeds being planted to create more light. And desire might mean sex. It might mean orgasm, right? That's two poles coming together, creating an explosion of light, right? And now if we're using it in an addictive way, if too much of anything is
Right.
not good for us,
Absolutely.
that's different. But ultimately, all of our desires are expressions of the creator.
True story. True story. And it's, I think I even went through a point in time through this journey that it's like, oh, I gotta be so serious about this. And I can't step out of my this, or I'm gonna whatever, right? Do you know what I'm trying to say? It doesn't have to be like that. Like just flow, right? Flow like life. We're meant to enjoy our life. Like after we get off this podcast, you'll go spend time with your family, right? You can enjoy life and still be healing. And when you step into your healing, not just you, I'm talking about you out there, all of yous, that like you truly, you're the best version of yourself.
In this moment,
In this moment, you're the best version of yourself. And it's pretty amazing when you can just be yourself, right? And sure, whoever that is at the core, because a lot of times we wear these masks where it's, I'm so pissed off at the world, I'm this angry person, and people think I'm just this angry bitch, and I'm not. I'm saying this as what I used to think of people thought of me, right? That I'm just angry all the time and all that. And that wasn't me, that wasn't me at all. And but people get that version of you because you show up in the world hurt,
mm-hmm.
carrying that shit, carrying the baggage. Like
Right?
I always say to people, aren't you tired? Shit. Aren't you tired of carrying the bags? Like
They're heavy.
so heavy. I mean, super heavy. It's like why do you need to carry all that shit? Like why do you need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders? God didn't give that to you. Like where's that coming from, right? Where we carry that weight, it's like why do I feel that way? Why do I feel like I'm carrying the weight? And then a lot of it is that just that programming that we're here, we have to change things, we have to do something. And it's like, no, just focusing on you has such a ripple effect. Yeah, such a ripple effect. If you don't do the inner work, who's going to do it?
Right.
Right. That's what I say. I mean, if you're not going to do it, nobody's going to do it for you. You have to be the one to do it. Good times coming ahead, I think.
I think so too.
I think we have some brave souls that are waking up and they're like, you know what, screw this. I wanna live a life of the pursuit of happiness and a life of abundance, because when you're happy and you're vibing in alignment with your creator, all of that comes. We don't have to figure it out. It's not something to be figured out, right? And that's something I had to learn too, is that like I don't have to have everything figured out. Just put one foot in front of the other and everything just starts to unfold.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing. And I think that's when life becomes magical. And yes, life is magical at times, I think. And it can
It
be.
is. If we
You
let
know,
it be magical.
yeah, let it, right? We don't have to be in control all the time. That control
Mm-hmm.
thing that control thing can really uh, mess things up. It really can. But I definitely, yeah, I got to have you back on We got to talk about this gateway process. There's so many things we could talk about.
Yeah, I love it. Let's
We
do
could
it.
do the gateway process. But so tell the listeners about your podcast, where folks can find you on social media. If you have a website, where they can find that. What's the address?
Yeah. So you can always go check out my website at www.thegrowthgoddess.net. My social media is the.growth.goddess on Instagram. And I have a podcast that was previously called The Uncharted Way, which is being rebranded as we speak to Fuck Anxiety. My guess is by the time that this episode is out, it will be called Fuck Anxiety. So if you want to search that in your search engine of your favorite platform, you can definitely come find me. I share lots of tools and resources and have some guests on as well. Yeah, that's where I hang out. So come play with me.
I love that. See, I don't get offended by foul language. I mean, I'm an ex-military girl, so I hung around flyers. So that doesn't even bother me. Personally think that cuss words were invented to break spells. That's what I think.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
would say if it does bother people, I'm not for you. And that's okay.
yeah. I kind of went back and forth of calling this podcast Harness the Shift or the Unfucking. And you never know. Something could evolve into the other one eventually. Who knows?
We
But
can always rebrand, which is what I'm doing. So
you can always rebrand, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, it's. I love that. I love that you just like you don't care. You don't care if people get offended. Who cares? If you get offended, maybe that's a cue to ask, why am I getting so offended by this? What does it say
or
about
an invitation to lean in.
lean in, baby, lean in?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else you want to say?
I think we have covered so much.
We have.
I think I always say this because there was a version of me that didn't believe it, but that people are innately good. And so to let yourself see the goodness
I
and
love
that
that. I couldn't. I
people show
couldn't.
up.
I'm telling you, I couldn't. I couldn't even echo that even more. Like, so true. I think with the chaos and all of that, it's all bad, 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 bad people, bad people. And it's like, no, it's like a little sliver. And then you got all of this humanity over here that if we just maybe, just for a minute, have a little bit of grace for those folks that have fallen into the fray where they've fallen asleep and things like that. It'll come around. The more that we can focus on our own growth, like we can inspire others to do. And that's the whole point of Harness the Shift, is to inspire folks to get on their journey, and to that maybe they are on their journey, and to stay on
Yeah,
it, and to be encouraged, to feel empowered that, you know what, there's days you're going to have where you're going to be like, F this, I don't want to do this anymore. But you're like, you know what? Nope. Got to keep on moving, keep it moving. And what's on the other side is pretty freaking amazing. So
agreed.
yeah, it is. I tell you, it is sometimes I sit back and I think to myself, wow, what we've been through. Sorry, it's amazing. It's so amazing. When do you want to come back? You got to come back.
I don't know. We'll have to definitely check our schedules and make something happen for sure.
All right, Sari. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey, because it's not easy sometimes to talk about ourselves and these parts of ourselves that we may not have been proud of when it was all going on, but we can look back and understand that it had its peace, it had its purpose in this grand scheme of life and in our experience. So I appreciate you for coming on and being open and sharing that and sharing your wisdom and the things that you've learned, and hope to have you on again to talk about anything you want to talk about. And I would like to encourage that our listeners, if you've got ideas or things you want us to talk about, that's always cool too. I like to get a little
A little
what people want
feedback.
to know about, a little
Yeah.
feedback back there, because not every guest I have on here wants to explore these certain areas like that are, I think, are fascinating, like the whole hologram reality. But every now and again, you get it somebody who like gets it and they understand it. So, and I think it is important to talk about it. So I
Agreed.
appreciate it.
I'm here for it. And I'm grateful for you. Thanks for creating a
Thank you.
space to have these conversations.
I thank you so much for saying that. And so whatever you do, you're going to do today, you have a wonderful time with your family, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Sounds amazing.
All right. Thank you everybody for dialing in to Harness the Shift with us today. We appreciate your feedback. So make sure that you comment, make sure you're following and that you're subscribing, and make sure that you go follow Sari, okay? And tell them again so that they know. So we could go ahead and pause if you need to pause, and go ahead and tell them again the website.
www.thegrowthgoddess.
Perfect. All right, did I lose you? Okay. Something's beeping. I'm like, what is beeping here? All right, everybody. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. And until next time, keep harnessing the That's a wrap. Thank you to our guests today. And if you would like to learn more about their work, all their links will be located in the podcast description. A quick shout out to our sponsor, LifeWave. I am a brand partner. These patches support energy, recovery, and overall wellness, and you can find out more about them under the central link in my bio, the Hooby link, hoo.b/harness the shift with J. All my offerings, including my coaching program when it's released, plus my contact information and social media links, are also available there, as well as in the podcast description. Thanks again for listening. I am Jay. I'll see you next episode on Harness the Shift.